Unexpected events can thrust us into moments of sheer confusion and uncertainty, leaving us unsure of how to react. Such an incident unfolded for me one serene Thursday evening. The house was enveloped in silence as my husband embarked on a business trip, leaving me to navigate the solitude and emptiness that stretched out over the week. Seeking a moment of peace, I decided to unwind, shutting the door behind me to cocoon myself in private tranquility. Suddenly, the sharp click of the door shattered the stillness. It swung open abruptly, and a burst of hallway light flooded the room, catching me off guard. I stood frozen, unable to speak, as waves of shame, insecurity, and embarrassment washed over me, imprinting an indelible memory on my heart. I'm Chloe, a 35-year-old woman whose life appears flawless to the outside world. My husband, Joseph, is a high-ranking executive at a major corporation. His professional success is matched by his deep love and devotion as a husband. On the surface, our life is the epitome of what many envy: a stunning home, a fulfilling existence, and a romance that seems straight out of a fairy tale. Yet, beneath this perfect facade lie hidden shadows that remain unseen by others. Within our marriage, there's an underlying frustration that gnaws at me, something I find hard to articulate. Joseph is a man constantly on the move. His relentless work ethic isn't just about personal ambition, it's also his dedication to securing our future together. Since we tied the knot, I've grown accustomed to his frequent absences, enduring long business trips, and attending meetings that stretch late into the night. I reassure myself that his sacrifices are essential for his career and our shared dreams. In the beginning, I brimmed with pride for having such an accomplished husband. Each time he returned from a trip, his eyes sparkled with love, and his tender gestures seamlessly bridged the time we spent apart. Our early married days were blissful, filled with heartfelt conversations about every aspect of our lives. He was always a patient listener, and I did everything in my power to ensure his comfort and happiness. Despite his hectic schedule, Joseph made it a point to plan outings and romantic evenings for us, making me feel like the luckiest woman alive. However, as the years rolled by, the rhythm of our lives began to shift. Joseph's workload intensified, pulling him into an ever-demanding cycle of business trips and back-to-back meetings that left little room for home. His time away grew more frequent, and even his returns were marred by the stress and exhaustion from his job. I recognized his unwavering effort, not just for his own success, but for the life we envisioned together. Yet, no matter how much I empathized, I couldn't ignore the expanding emptiness within me. Beyond the demands of his career, the most troubling issue was the growing distance between us, a silent rift that neither of us seemed able to bridge. Every evening, Joseph seemed to age before my eyes, his vitality diminishing with each passing day. Our once vibrant intimacy no longer left me feeling whole, and I could sense that he was aware of this change too. I never summoned the courage to express my feelings or place any blame on him. Instead, the lingering sense of loss weighed heavily on my heart. As a woman with significant emotional and physical needs, I yearned for the deep connection that marriage is meant to provide. Yet, the reality was that he no longer had the strength to fulfill those needs. When Joseph was away, our home felt eerily empty and cold. The silence was so profound that I could hear the relentless ticking of the clock and the gentle rustling of leaves outside my window. Dining alone and spending long nights in the vast, unoccupied bed only amplified my loneliness. I tried various ways to fill the void, from losing myself in books and practicing yoga to shopping and attending different classes, but these activities were merely temporary distractions. As night fell, loneliness seeped into every corner of my soul like an unshakable shadow. I hesitated to blame Joseph because I knew he loved me and was doing everything he could to provide for our future. However, this understanding did little to ease the emptiness growing inside me. I yearned for the closeness and intimacy we once shared, the tender glances, the soft whispers in my ear, all of which now seemed like distant memories. I refrained from voicing my true feelings, afraid that it might hurt him or add to his burdens. Yet, this silence only pushed us further apart, creating an ever-widening gap between us. I found myself at a loss, unsure of how to bridge this divide. My attempts to stay busy were merely temporary fixes. When I looked into the mirror, I saw a woman who was exhausted not from work or life's demands, but from the profound emptiness residing within her soul. Is there a way to draw him nearer, or am I destined to dwell in this concealed loneliness indefinitely? My determination remains unshaken, yet I find myself at a loss, unsure of where to begin repairing the dwindling connection between us. Can Joseph grasp the unspoken feelings I've long kept buried? I fear that one day, these unvoiced emotions might create an unbridgeable chasm between us. When Joseph informed me that his stepson, William, would be returning from abroad, a swirl of curiosity and apprehension took hold of me. William, approaching his 27th year, was Joseph's son from a previous marriage. Since my marriage to Joseph, our paths had never crossed. William had lived and pursued his studies overseas. Joseph often spoke of William with immense pride, revealing a deeply affectionate father-son bond. Although their interactions were infrequent, William's return breathed new life into our household. He was tall, with striking features and a warm, engaging smile that effortlessly won hearts. From our very first meeting, William's polite manners and witty remarks made me feel instantly at ease. The house, typically enveloped in quietude, suddenly buzzed with energy. Joseph's happiness at William's return was evident, and I found myself sharing in that joy. William's presence was like a refreshing breeze, alleviating the pervasive sense of emptiness I had been grappling with. During Joseph's frequent business trips, William seamlessly integrated into our daily routines. Family dinners, once tinged with coldness, were now filled with cheerful laughter and lively conversations. I realized that William's companionship significantly lessened my loneliness. He often assisted with household chores and entertained me with fascinating stories from his time abroad, bringing moments of genuine happiness into my life. However, as time went on, an inexplicable tension began to emerge, casting a subtle strain on the bond between William and me. Something intangible yet unsettling shifted in our interactions, leaving me to wonder what had caused this sudden change. Despite the warmth he initially brought, an undercurrent of awkwardness started to take root, hinting that not everything was as harmonious as it seemed. That evening, Joseph embarked on yet another business trip, leaving William and me to navigate the quietness of our home alone. After dinner, I decided to unwind with an early shower in preparation for bedtime. Stepping out, I draped a towel around myself, my hair still damp from the steam. Assuming William was lounging in the living room, I didn't bother to lock the bathroom door. Unexpectedly, the door swung open, and there stood William, rooted to the spot, his eyes wide with astonishment. Caught off guard, I froze, unsure of how to respond. In a moment of sheer panic, my hand instinctively tugged at my scarf, and before I could regain composure, it slipped from my shoulders, cascading to the floor. Though the incident lasted mere seconds, it felt interminable to me. William quickly averted his gaze, his cheeks flushed with embarrassment as he stammered an apology. "I didn't realize you were here." "I'm so sorry," he murmured before hastily retreating and shutting the door behind him. My heart raced, a tumultuous mix of embarrassment and confusion coursing through me. I swiftly tugged the towel back into place, berating myself for my lack of caution. From that evening onward, the dynamic between William and me shifted irreversibly. He began to dodge my gaze whenever our paths crossed, and I found myself avoiding eye contact in return. An uneasy tension settled between us, turning our interactions stiff and uncomfortable. Though Joseph remained oblivious, what perplexed me most was the whirlwind of emotions brewing inside me. The memory of that fleeting moment in the bathroom haunted my thoughts incessantly. William's bashful stare during that unexpected encounter lingered in my mind, stirring feelings I couldn't quite comprehend. Embarrassment intertwined with a strange sense of excitement. I chastised myself for these unwanted thoughts, yet I couldn't ignore the heightened awareness I now had of him. Occasionally, I'd catch him strolling down the hallway, and my pulse would quicken uncontrollably. I endeavored to maintain a semblance of normalcy, masking the turmoil beneath the surface. Yet, Deep down, an indescribable sensation gnawed at me, a subtle yet persistent undercurrent that I couldn't quite name. The once comfortable coexistence we shared had morphed into something unrecognizable, leaving me yearning for answers I wasn't sure how to find. I knew I shouldn't let these emotions surface. Joseph was the man I cherished, the one who had bestowed upon me his unwavering trust. Yet, every time Joseph was away, leaving just William and me alone in the house, the initial awkwardness between us slowly gave way to a feeling I dared not name. The turmoil within me made it impossible to remain detached. William, sensing something was amiss, also began to distance himself. I noticed his efforts to avoid being alone with me only deepened my confusion. I couldn't shake the memory of his gaze that day in the bathroom, confused yet laden with something unspoken. I reassured myself that it was merely an accident and that things would return to normal, but they didn't. The harder I tried to suppress these thoughts, the more entangled I became in them. Over time, I felt myself slipping away. I found myself fixated on William, every gesture he made, every glance he cast, every smile he offered. There were moments when I intentionally sought out opportunities to be near him, a minor request here, a story that stretched on longer than necessary there, or positioning myself where I knew he would walk by. I couldn't rationalize why I acted this way, but this new emotion burned within me like a smoldering fire I couldn't and didn't want to extinguish. In William's gaze, I occasionally caught a flicker of bewilderment intertwined with a hint of curiosity. I couldn't help but wonder if he perceived something amiss within me. On one particular occasion, Joseph announced a week-long business trip, leaving our cozy home under the care of William and me. Initially, I reassured myself that it was just another routine separation, much like the countless times before. Yet, deep down, I sensed that the dynamics had irrevocably shifted since that unsettling incident in the bathroom. An unspoken tension now lingered between William and me, a silent conflict I was reluctant to acknowledge. One sunny afternoon, I mustered the courage to ask William for help in fixing a cabinet in my bedroom. Though the task wasn't urgent, I was eager to observe his reaction as he entered the room. Intentionally, I chose an outfit that was more relaxed and slightly revealing than my usual attire. Standing close to him, I initiated subtle touches, a fleeting brush of his hand, a lingering glance that seemed to hold more than mere courtesy. William met my eyes, a trace of confusion evident, yet he maintained his composure. My heart raced, acutely aware that this encounter was testing the boundaries we had both unknowingly begun to approach. "Just leave it here," he responded, his voice soft yet resolute. He swiftly completed the task, rising to maintain a respectful distance. "Do you need anything else?" William inquired, his eyes deliberately avoiding mine. I nodded, striving to maintain a calm facade, but as he exited the room without a backward glance, a wave of disappointment and perplexity washed over me. Each night, when Joseph called from his travels, I endeavored to keep my voice steady, concealing the turmoil within. Yet, once the call ended, an incessant unease gnawed at my heart. I was acutely aware of the wrongness in my thoughts and actions, recognizing that I was teetering on the edge of propriety. Despite my rational mind's efforts to suppress these feelings, William's image relentlessly infiltrated my thoughts. The awkward moment in the bathroom, his composed demeanor juxtaposed with that fleeting, enigmatic look, these memories resurfaced every time I closed my eyes. I found myself unable to shake the persistent thoughts of him, caught in a web of emotions I couldn't fully comprehend or control. Every accidental encounter within the house quickened my pulse. William had changed. He became more reserved, his conversations dwindling, and his eyes often averted whenever our paths crossed. Yet, in fleeting moments, I sensed that his indifference wasn't absolute. Perhaps he, too, was grappling with inner conflicts, or maybe it was merely my imagination crafting excuses for the burgeoning emotions stirring within me. One Thursday night, nearly a week after Joseph departed on his business trip, the boundaries between William and me dissolved entirely. Our modest home settled into an unprecedented silence. The stillness was so profound that the wind whispering through the window became audible, yet this tranquility offered no solace. Instead, It felt like an internal blaze smoldering within me, leaving me feeling both suffocated and hollow. Since our marriage, I had never experienced such intense loneliness. While Joseph's frequent business trips were routine, this time the emptiness lingered longer, suggesting that the distance was not merely physical, but also a deep-seated disconnect between us. I lay on the bed, striving to shut out the world and drift into sleep, but an unquenchable fire burned in my heart. The longing intensified until I recognized that I could no longer endure this sensation. A daring thought flickered through my mind, and before I could restrain myself, I reached for the phone on the nightstand. Unlocking the screen, I began searching for movies that might help dissipate some of the rising desire. I convinced myself that this was merely a strategy to fill the void, a means to dispel the pervasive loneliness enveloping me. I settled onto the bed, losing myself in the flickering images on the screen. My emotions swelled, each passing second pulling me deeper into a hypnotic state where the world around me ceased to exist. I surrendered my body to the sensations, allowing my feelings to carry me into a realm of ecstasy. In that vulnerable moment, I neglected to lock the door, my focus entirely on quelling the frustration that gnawed at my heart. After a week apart from Joseph, I felt an overwhelming need to fill the emptiness within me by any means necessary. As my emotions peaked, the tranquility was abruptly shattered by the sudden creak of the door. Startled, I froze, every muscle in my body tense with fear and surprise. A sliver of hallway light seeped through the barely open door, casting an unexpected spotlight on my secluded sanctuary. There stood William in the doorway, his eyes wide with shock and bewilderment. For a few agonizing seconds, we locked gazes in silent disbelief. Instinctively, I hastily pulled the blanket up, desperately trying to conceal the state I was in, hoping to erase any trace of what had just transpired. My heart raced, a tumultuous blend of fear and an unnameable shame pulsing through my veins. "I'm sorry," William stammered, his gaze instantly dropping to the floor. Without a word, he hastily shut the door and hurried away, leaving me alone to grapple with a whirlwind of uncontrollable emotions. I remained seated, trembling uncontrollably, unsure of how long I had been frozen in that spot, engulfed by a haze of confusion and mortification that seemed to suffuse the entire room. Without warning, the door creaked open once more. Before I could steady myself, William re-entered, his eyes reflecting a mix of bewilderment and resolve. Startled, my heart pounded with a mix of fear and embarrassment. Instinctively, I pulled the blanket tighter around me, desperate to conceal my vulnerability. "William, what are you doing?" I managed to utter, my voice quivering. "Please, just leave." "This can't be happening," I murmured, but William remained silent. He took a deliberate step closer, his eyes locked onto mine as if attempting to dismantle every barrier I had built around myself. Before I could gather my thoughts, he settled onto the bed just a few feet away, his hands slightly trembling yet still resting gently on my shoulders. "Sister," he began, his voice a soft blend of curiosity and anguish, "is it that Dad isn't fulfilling your needs?" His question left me momentarily frozen. I shook my head slowly, striving to preserve the fragile semblance of composure I clung to. I took a shaky breath, trying to steady my nerves. "No, it's not like that, William." We can't," I stammered, but my voice was so weak and uncertain that even I didn't believe it. William didn't flinch, his eyes never leaving mine, a quiet intensity building between us. He moved closer still, his gaze piercing, as if he could see straight through me. "You're seducing me, aren't you?" His voice was low, almost a whisper, but it held an undeniable weight. "Your eyes, your gestures, everything about you says it. Or maybe you just need me." I opened my mouth to deny him, but the words refused to come out. Instead, I sat frozen, my body rigid, as if caught in an invisible trap. Despite my desperate need to look away, my eyes were drawn to his, as if they had a power over me. "No, William, I finally managed, but the words felt hollow. My flushed face, my frantic gaze, betrayed every one of my protests, as if they were nothing more than lies I couldn't control. It was as though he could read my thoughts, and the truth was all too clear. William leaned down, wrapped his arms around my waist, and pulled me into his embrace. The warmth of his body made me lose all ability to resist. I trembled but did not push him away, nor did I say another word. "You don't need to say anything, just look at me and I know," his voice whispered in my ear, gentle but like a fire burning away all the barriers in me. I wanted to push him away, but instead my hands unconsciously tightened around his arms. The turmoil within me faded the instant his lips met mine, gentle yet fiercely passionate. In that fleeting moment, every ounce of reason inside me unraveled. I felt the boundary I was crossing, knew it was wrong, yet couldn't pull away. We became one, our emotions overwhelming any words. The hallway light streamed through the door's narrow gap, silently witnessing the complete dissolution of the barriers between us. When it ended, I lay quietly in his arms, my body and mind awash with a whirlwind of mixed emotions. Regret slowly began to seep in, yet alongside it emerged an unexplainable sensation, as if I had stepped over a threshold beyond return. Uncertain of how I would confront tomorrow, all I could grasp in that moment was that the divide between William and me had been utterly obliterated. From that day forward, every barrier that once stood between us had vanished completely. Gone were the shy glances and the evasive gestures that once defined our interactions. Instead, there was only a newfound openness between William and me. Every encounter between us was charged with a silent language known only to us. Despite residing together as stepmother and stepchild, our stolen moments made William and me feel like a genuine pair. William became the sanctuary that healed the emptiness within me, both emotionally and physically. Each glance, every gentle touch, every whispered word bridged the gaps left by my marriage to Joseph. Yet, a lingering awareness told me this clandestine connection was fleeting, and indeed, it was. One day, William revealed he was returning overseas to finish his incomplete studies. The announcement struck me like a frigid wave, dousing any semblance of hope. While I masked my turmoil outwardly, the profound sense of loss gnawed at me internally. I maintained a composed facade, but with each day that William's departure loomed closer, my heart grew increasingly burdened. On the day William departed, the house was suffused with a profound sense of regret. Joseph and I accompanied him to the airport together. Just before stepping into the check-in area, William paused to embrace Joseph before turning towards me. I held him in my arms slightly longer than felt natural. Joseph stood nearby, smiling, perhaps assuming that my reluctance to let William go was due to our family ties, but only William and I knew that our hug carried deeper emotions. "Take care of yourself," William whispered into my ear, his voice strained yet striving to remain composed. I remained silent, holding him tighter as if desperate to capture the final moments before his departure. An emptiness enveloped me. Once William was gone, the house descended into an eerie quietness. I returned to my daily life with Joseph, but the feeling of hollowness lingered. In the early days, I moved through the house like a shadow, performing tasks on autopilot. I tried to reassure myself that time would heal my wounds, but the void William left was more immense than I had anticipated. During the long nights spent beside Joseph, I felt utterly trapped. Despite Joseph's enduring love and care, his affections could no longer bridge the growing void within me. I felt a profound sense of loss and knew that continuing down this path was untenable. One evening after dinner, I resolved to have an honest conversation with Joseph. I didn't bring up William, but I bared my soul nonetheless. "Joseph," I began, my voice quivering slightly, "I feel like we've been drifting apart lately. You're always consumed with work, and I feel lost. There are times when I feel completely alone in this marriage," I continued, my heart aching with each word. Joseph set down his chopsticks, his eyes brimming with remorse. "I'm sorry, Chloe," he said earnestly. "I had no idea you were feeling this way. My work has taken up so much of my time, and I haven't given you the attention you deserve." "I don't blame you," I replied softly, "but I think we need to make changes, or I'm afraid we won't be able to keep living like this." Silence enveloped us for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Joseph reached out and took my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "You're right. I've been so absorbed in work for so long that I forgot what truly matters: our family." I'll change, I promise. I whispered, unsure how long his promise would hold, yet feeling a wave of relief for having expressed my feelings. A few days after our heartfelt conversation, Joseph shared his decision to resign from his job. I've worked hard all these years and saved enough money so we don't have to worry about finances anymore, he explained. I want to dedicate the rest of my time to making it up to you, so we can truly enjoy our lives together. His words filled me with hope. For the first time in a long while, I felt that perhaps we could rebuild what we had lost and find happiness together once more. I was taken aback by his decision, yet a deep sense of gratitude welled up inside me. For the first time, Joseph truly grasped my needs and was willing to transform for our sake. In the days that followed, Joseph became a more present figure at home. We strolled through the evenings, cooked meals side by side, and spent long nights conversing just like we did in the early days of our marriage. Despite lingering shadows within my heart that I couldn't fully reveal, Joseph's renewed presence began to mend the emptiness inside me. Though the future remained uncertain, I felt a glimmer of hope that peace might still be attainable with the man I had chosen. After William's departure, life slowly edged back to its familiar rhythm. Joseph honored his promise, dedicating more time to our relationship. He remained home more often, tending to me with genuine care and affection. We navigated tranquil days, striving to rebuild the connection that had once waned. Yet, deep down, I knew the fractures in my heart wouldn't heal easily. William lingered in my memories like a persistent shadow, a constant reminder of my transgressions. I had once believed that alleviating my loneliness would lead to happiness, but reality proved otherwise. The weight of guilt and internal conflict was the inevitable cost of crossing that line. There were nights when I watched Joseph sleep peacefully beside me, questioning whether I deserved his unwavering love. The answer was invariably no. My mistake had rendered our marriage more fragile than ever. Joseph, oblivious to the turmoil I had caused, continued to love me with all his heart. Meanwhile, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the profound sense that I had shattered the most sacred trust between us. Reflecting on my journey, I recognized that my greatest error was failing to be truthful with myself about my emotions and needs from the outset. Feeling lonely and empty never justified crossing moral boundaries, regardless of the circumstances. I should have opened up to Joseph sooner instead of allowing isolation to steer me off course. Marriage demands not only love, but also mutual understanding and communication. Ignoring and suppressing issues only causes the relationship to deteriorate over time, paving the way for unhealthy emotions to take root. It's crucial to be honest with your partner. If loneliness strikes, reach out and share your feelings. Addressing problems head-on is the only path to resolution. Embrace self-love and prevent the void from consuming you. Engage in healthy activities like reading, acquiring new skills, or connecting with friends to nurture yourself. Uphold ethical boundaries in every situation. Remember, a fleeting moment of weakness can irreparably damage a relationship. Value what you have and always consider the repercussions before taking action. Marriage is a continuous journey of learning and growth. If given another chance, I would choose to face challenges with honesty and bravery instead of allowing my mistakes to dictate my life. Heartbreaks are costly lessons, but don't let them deprive you of your happiness. My story concludes here. Thank you all for listening to my heartfelt confessions. I hope my experience serves as a reminder for us to cherish and safeguard our happiness. Farewell.